Right, so this lecture video is going to go over the anatomy of the eye and the ear. So the eye is responsible for receiving and processing visual detail. It allows us to see light and color through specialized cells called rods and cones. Rods allow us to see low light and black and white detail, and then cones allow us to see color, and both of these types of cells or photoreceptors are going to be found along the retina. So looking at the external eye, so if you were to look at some of the different muscles, we talked about this when we looked at some of the muscles in the muscle unit, but your orbicularis oculi muscle is going to help in passing and draining tears, facial expression, and closes the eyelid, so like if you were winking. Your palpebrae conjunctiva is a clear membrane that coats the eye, so that would be located up in here. And then the conjunctiva is going to line the inside of the eyelid and cover the sclera, which is going to be the outside area. Looking at the external eye then, we have we're really going to kind of focus on the things that produce tears. So you got your lacrimal glands, which are going to be located up here on the lateral outside part of the eye. So right above, towards the outside, you can sometimes you can feel the soft little area where that would exist. But its job is to produce tears. The lacrimal sac is going to be the storage for an overflow of tears, and then the nasal lacrimal duct will carry the tears from the sac to the nasal cavity. So basically the lacrimal glands, and you can't see it here, but there would be a duct that's going to travel down in here through the lacrimal duct to the lacrimal puncta, and that is going to be where the direction that tears will start to flow, and then in this lacrimal sac it will kind of hold any excess tears until it can drain down into your nose, into the nasal lacrimal duct. So we'll go from the gland to the puncta to the ducts to the sac to the nasal lacrimal duct. So looking at your internal eye then, the sclera is going to be the white part of your eye. So it's kind of this outer layer here of your eye. The cornea is going to be the outer layer of the very front of your eye. It's the first place that light's going to enter into. The choroid, which is this brownish, greenish layer right here, it's located just inside the sclera, and it's going to be a layer of tissue that contains all the blood vessels that help supply the eye with the nourishment that they need and the blood. The anterior cavity is going to be located right in here, and it's filled with a fluid called the aqueous humor, and it helps maintain pressure. So if you've ever had a glaucoma test and they are testing the pressure and they put that puff of air into your eye, they're testing the pressure in this anterior cavity. Going from the anterior cavity is the iris, which is going to be the colored part of your eye, and it's going to control how much light is being let into the eye. In the middle is an opening called your pupil, and again, your pupil will get bigger or smaller, letting certain amounts of light in. So when if it's very dark, your pupil will be very big. It'll be dilated because we want to let as much light in as we can to help us see. But when you wake up in the morning and you turn on the lights and it's really hard to see, your pupils are going to get super, super small because there's so much light. We don't want to burn the back of our retina. We only want to let a tiny bit of light in, so it will get really, really small. Behind the pupil then is the lens, and the lens is going to transmit light and focus that light. And on the sides of the lens are structures called a ciliary body, which kind of holds the lens in place, and then they also make this aqueous humor so that this fluid can constantly be replenished and replaced. Moving in then, we have this big cavity behind the lens called the posterior cavity. It's like this great big room, and it's filled with a jelly-like substance called vitreous humor. And this vitreous humor, this liquid, fluid, gel-like substances will further transmit the light because we want to get it to the very back of the eye, which is called the retina. The retina senses light and it sends signals to the brain, and it'll send the signals to the brain via the macular lutae, the fovea centralis, and the optic disc. So the best way to think about these is to think about the retina is sharp vision, the macular lutta is sharper, and the fovea centralis is even sharper. So the sharpest. So it basically will make the image sharper as you go through it. Once that retina then sends the information out, the optic nerve, where the information will go to the brain where it wants to be analyzed. So, and again, the retina is going to contain those rods and cone cells or photoreceptors that will allow you to detect color and light. All right, so let's move on to the ear. The ear is in charge of hearing and balance. Sound is just vibration, and so when we sense a sound, we're really just analyzing vibration. There are three parts of the ear, outer, middle, and inner, and basically what we do is we transfer the vibration to the vestibular cochlear nerve, which will then send the information to the temporal lobe of the brain to be analyzed as sound. So let's start with the external ear. This is the part of the ear that you can see. The auricle is like I said, the part of your ear flap, for lack of a better word. And then your opening into the ear canal or the external auditory canal is called the external auditory meatus. So that's going to be your ear canal that's right in here. You know, the place where they always tell you don't stick a Q-tip. Going then into the middle ear. So once that vibration comes in here, it's going to hit the tympanic membrane, which will cause it to vibrate, and then it will transfer that vibration to the three smallest bones in the body, the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. The stapes is going to be connected to a structure that's called the cochlea, and there's a part here of the cochlea which is called the round window, and its job is to kind of connect that middle ear to the inner ear. Inside here is your auditory tube or your eustachian tube, which is also considered the middle ear. So this eustachian tube is where those three bones are kind of going to sit, and it's going to, again, be a connection between the vibrations coming in from the outer ear before it transmits it into the inner ear. The oval window is going to be the place where the stapes actually attaches to the cochlea. So the inner ear. The inner ear is going to be made of the cochlea and these semicircular canals. These semicircular canals are going to function in your balance. There are hairs located along all of these inner ear structures that will swish fluid around and help. That fluid distribution is what's going to help us be able to maintain balance and equilibrium. And as those vibrations come in, they move those hairs as well. So as those hairs move, we will be able to process those into sound, and then it also helps provide us with balance and equilibrium. Once those vibrations have moved things around in here, it will then send that information out to different nerves, which will eventually combine. So we usually just call it the vestibulocollicular nerve. Here they're listed separately, but just imagine that these two end up joining into one farther down the line, and this is going to send the information to, again, the temporal lobe of the brain, where the brain would then analyze it as sound.